Hi, I'm Danny DeVito.
I'm Raven Simone.
Patrick Warburton.
Harvey Firestein.
Sylvester Stallone.
Wallace Shawn.
Tara Strong.
Gilbert Gottfried.
Woody Rose Taylor.
Kevin Grievous.
James Arnold Taylor.
Ian McKellen.
Hi, I'm Emily Blunt. I am the voice of Zoe.
And I'm John Krasinski, the voice of Owen in the new animated movie Animal Crackers, which we are very excited to show you the world premiere of the trailer.
Prepare yourself for something truly magical.
What happened to that wide-eyed kid who used to love the circus?
He grew up. I'm eating dog biscuits for a job. Hey, old Blue, what do you have here?
That's kind of weird. Old animal crackers?
I'm a hamster!
Daddy's cute.
Thank you, Angel.
We're going to the circus!
How do these things work?
It's magic. You're special, kid. Your uncle saw that. You are now the proud owners of one rundown circus.
This is what we've always wanted. I mean, this is your future. This is our future.
This isn't a future. Everything that was special about this circus is gone.
When's this gonna end?
Can't be soon enough. They didn't come here to see acrobats.
I have to do something.
Like what?
Animals.
Into the unknown. Get me those animal crackers. I will use them to rule the world.
Make people happy.
That was fun.
Well, hello. Well, hello.
Well, hello.
Well, hello. Look at you. Hi, I just happen to be reading. Welcome.
I was looking at my
Oh, shit.
Mead Shaver book that came in the mail this week.
Wait, hold on a second. Hold on, I got stuff played in my ear.
Uh-oh.
We're good.
Netflix is taking over. It's taking over the show as a sponsor, and now has decided that
That's right. It's
we
trying
must
to
dance to their tune.
It's trying to make me pay tithing. Hey guys, welcome back to Pencil to Pencil, your favorite pandemic podcast.
Is it the favorite? Are there others?
It's
your favorite?
It's my favorite.
Okay.
And I keep hearing everybody and their mothers doing podcasts right now. But
yep.
I think
my mom's starting tomorrow. Mom Manley's podcast. Yes,
I hope she'll let us be guests, because that would suck. She was like, you know what? Talk to my publicist. I don't know if we can fit you in. I'm Jamar Nicholas, Philadelphia's favorite cartoonist, and also one of the co-hosts of Pencil to Pencil. I am joined tonight by my best bud Mike Manley and Master.
No, I'm just Mike. It just says Mike. It just says.
Oh, okay. So you're switching it up on me, right? You're trying to keep me on my toes. How you doing, Mike?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Here in Philly, we had a lot of flooding and raining.
It's true.
Last week, so everybody's a little waterlogged. But I'm glad to be back on the air.
It's moist. It's a moist day.
It's very moist. Let's give a plug to our sponsors, Clip Studio Paint, and also our good friends over at Tomorrow's Publishing. Please go to either one of these exciting places and buy all of their stuff. Tonight, Mike, we have a really special guest in the green room, our good friend SCOTT Christian Sava. I've been a fan and friend of Scott's for a long time. Like when I was like young Jamar doing the convention circuit, I would see this cat.
Circa what year? Well, young cat?
I'm not measuring tapes with you, sir.
What year? This is like 2016.
I think it might have been like 2001, 2, 3, something like that.
Oh, okay.
And Scott would show up at the table with these like magnificently published hardback books. They're beautiful graphic tomes. And I just remember I was always peeping. I'm like, yo, this guy's like on another level. So it would not surprise me. Here we are almost 20 years later, and Scott's on top of the world. So I got into this very funny place when we had Brian Lee O'Malley on, when I read his blurb, and I thought it was kind of fun. So Scott gave me this Declaration of Independence. I'm not going to read the whole thing, so I'm just going to read the beginning, the end, and then we'll bring him in. All right, you ready for my Jamar Gross?
Okay,
my
go ahead.
Jamar Gross. I gotta breathe.
Get that NPR voice. Come on.
Over the last 20 years, Scott Christian Sava's work has brought some of the world's most beloved characters to life in film, television, comics, and games. From Casper the Friendly Ghost to the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers to Star Trek and Spider-Man. Scott's unique talents and vision have been called upon by Disney, Universal Studios, Nickelodeon, and more. Now I'm going to go to the bottom. Scott's first movie, Animal Crackers, is now in full production, and he is living the dream in his hometown of Franklin, Tennessee. Pencil to pencilers, please welcome Scott Christian Sava to the program. You like that?
I think I better update that because I'm not still in production on that film. But
you get it. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, no problem, man. Yeah. I enjoy NPR voice, so anytime I get that. So just before we get started, people, if you're watching on Facebook, hello. If you're watching on YouTube, hello. I can't see you, so if you're hanging out in the comments, type away so we can interact with you. If you have a question for Scott or Mike or myself, please get started, and I'll control the room. And Mike, you want to throw a question to Scott, and we'll get started.
Well, why don't you give the viewers a little bit of your origin story, so we get a little bit of perspective. You know, you can work backwards from where you are, or you can work from the ancient past to the present.
Okay. Well, it didn't start with being bitten by a radioactive pencil, so I apologize. But I went to art school back in. I graduated. Well, I started in '88, I think '87 or '88, and I went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco. I was an illustration major, and this was before they had computers in the school, so it was figure drawing and painting and composition and color and whatnot. And so we studied the masters and drew a lot. About 2 years in, I got an internship at Sega of America. Making video games. I was working on Sega Genesis games. So my very first game was a game called Kid Chameleon.
I love Kid Chameleon.
You remember it? Where you put helmets?
Do you have that in your cave, Jamar?
I have that in my man cave. We're gonna have to talk off camera.
Oh yeah. I have some photos because again, we didn't have zip drive. Everything was proprietary. It was 16-bit games. There was no computer, so it was like a proprietary workstation kind of thing. And but I remember I worked on the Samurai and a couple of others. But I have a picture of my work on the Samurai, and that kind of got me into games. And when I graduated, I got into more games, was working in, D-Paint was a software, an animation software back in the day that was at least something that the normal person could get. You didn't have to work for a big company. And then I eventually got a job working at Atari Games as a game designer. And there I worked on Guardians of the Hood, Bounty Hunter, which eventually became Area 51, and Primal Rage. And when my wife and I, we got married, it was 1993. And by 1994, I took a job at Malibu Comics because I really wanted to do comics. That was all I wanted to do was Spider-Man. And so from when I was 17, so now I'm about 23, I think, 24, and I'm living in LA. But from when I was 17, I was going every year to the comic conventions, trying to get that job, trying to get that Spider-Man gig. And I was getting rejected because when you guys have seen my work, it is not traditional pencil and ink type of style. It's more of a painterly, but people weren't really doing the painterly stuff until Alex Ross came around, and then everybody wanted Alex Ross stuff. And so fortunately I got some work at Malibu doing Star Trek covers. and that was really cool. And then eventually I got my first gig in animation doing Casper the Friendly Ghost. I was the lead animator on Stretch, the uncle. And so I got to do a couple of those movies. And that eventually turned into a lot of freelance work with Saban, doing Power Rangers and whatnot. And all the time going to Comic-Con every year, going to WonderCon, going wherever I could, trying to get that gig. And I met at Comic-Con, I met Marv Wolfman and Len Wein. And I begged them to help me crack the code. How do I get this gig? And they were really cool. They took their time. They met with me for lunch, and they said, they gave me pointers. I did some pages. They sent it in, got rejected. Did another one, sent it in, got rejected. Marv then had an idea. He says, why don't you try using your day job of doing the animation and applying that to the comic books? And I wasn't very happy about it because I wanted to draw the books or paint them, but I gave it a shot. And a few months later, I got a call from Axel Alonso saying, we want you to do this book. And I got my dream job. Wow. So that was 2001. I finished the series in 2002. And after that, I was like, I'm good. I'm done, to my wife. And so we were married 9 years at the time. So we had kids and we had twins. And so in 2003, the boys were born. And at that point, Marv and Len, they said, okay, look, you did your thing. You did something for Marvel. Now go and make your own stuff. Don't be like us where you're watching Marvel and DC go off and make a bunch of money off of our stuff. Go and create your own IPs. And so I did. I started writing books for my kids. And I think it was shortly after that I met you, Jamar, and I met it was John Gallagher and Rich Faber and the rest of the Kids Love Comics gang. And we started to kind of make books and go to conventions. And I think I really kind of found my voice as a writer, because I wasn't really writing up until that point, but I found my voice as a writer making kids books. And I loved doing it, and I loved telling stories. And we decided we wanted to get out of Los Angeles, and so we moved to Franklin, Tennessee. That was 13 years ago. And one day I was in the backyard with the boys, and we were eating animal crackers, and I just had an idea. I was like, well, what if when you ate a lion cookie, poof, you became a lion, and you eat a giraffe cookie and poof, you become a giraffe? And they loved it, and I loved it, and I thought, I'll make that a book. And so I wrote that as one of the books. I've written about 13, 14 books, I think, by now. And so it was one of the books, and then it just kind of got shelved. And I'm going for the whole history. You guys okay?
Right. Yeah.
Hold on. I got one for you. J. Robert Deans, who's a good friend of all of us. And I had to help kind of curate some of his questions, Scott. I think he was coming for your throat. So but this is nice, and this is a nice curveball. Softball. He says, was that when you started Dreamland?
Yeah, 2003.
Chronicles, right? Yeah.
Yeah, when the boys were born is when I had come up with the idea for Dreamland Chronicles back in college. When I first discovered, it was like a history of illustration class. I discovered Winsor McKay's Little Nemo in Slumberland, and I just fell in love with the art and the story, and just the idea of a then 19, 20-year-old kid going, what happened when he got older? Did he get to date the princess? Did he, was there, because they were just kids, I was like, well, what happened when he got to my age? Was he still going to Slumberland? They never did that. And so that's where the idea for the Dreamland Chronicles came, was just that. And in all honesty, in my notes from college to when my boys were born, the character was just called Nemo. It was just notes of something I wanted to do one day. But the kids were really the impetus of making me sit down and actually write that book, and really the series, and doing that. And and I think also by that point I had done Spider-Man in that CGI style, and I really wanted to, now that I had spent 10 months working on that series, I wanted to really see if I could push the art, without the deadlines of Marvel and the limited budgets, that just put all of my money and all my effort into that and see if I could push it. And yeah, that started a 13-year endeavor. I think I finished the series in 2016. So
I'd like to back up a little bit, because you said you started in games. You came out of school and you went into games.
Yeah.
Was that something that you wanted to do, was games, or was that just a job that you like? I need a job.
It was just
a job.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a job. I mean, as far as jobs go, it was fun, and I always loved games. But again, I was obsessed with Spider-Man. Obsessed, I mean, it was and so everything. Casper the Friendly Ghost, Power Rangers, whatever that job was. Even when I was doing covers for Malibu Comics for Star Trek Deep Space Nine, when I was on the lot with the Star Trek Voyager crew, it was cool, but in the back of my mind it was like, but this isn't Spider-Man, so it was just, I was obsessed. I mean, it was a 30-year obsession, and then when I finally achieved it, it was like, okay, well, what now? And I think that's when I kind of realized that you have to start setting new goals, setting new dreams, and just don't be as obsessed about it.
Right. The other question I had was, you started doing, the animation. Where did you learn to do the animation? And because that's a whole separate track, becoming a character animator.
Yeah.
And learning that particular and the software's changed so much between when I'm sure you started and where it is now.
Yeah, the 2-bit, the 16-bit 2D, stuff going to 3D. When I went to go work on the Casper films, they were doing tryouts. I didn't get the job. I had to try out for it, and they were using a certain software, and I'd never done 3D animation or really character animation that wasn't for video games. And it was, I remember I sat there, and it was a sweatshop. So there was like, shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of other people. And I just kept saying, all I could do was say, okay, how do you set a key? Go to the guy next to me. How do you set a keyframe? Oh, you hit this button. Okay, how do I scroll from this to this? Okay, you do that. And I just figured it out on the fly that day.
Wow.
And what I did was I remembered John Buscema's How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. And I remembered, he was saying, if you're going to draw a punch, you can either do this or this, but you don't want this, And so I was looking at that as going, okay, this is a keyframe and that's a keyframe, and then let the computer fill in the rest. And so I was only doing the most extreme poses and letting the computer fill in the rest and just seeing what happened. I wasn't using any kind of acting techniques or squash and stretch or anything the stuff that I wound up learning later on, and none of the stuff that traditional animators knew. But it was at a time, this was the mid 90s, where there were no CGI animators. CGI was still so new that pretty much everybody who I was working with were engineers. They were technicians. They were people who could work the software but had no clue about acting or about art or anything like that. So me coming in and having worked in video games, I had an aptitude for computers, but I was an artist first. And so within 2 weeks, I think it was within 2 weeks, I was promoted to lead on the character, because and it was just I was able to learn at such a faster pace because I studied, figure drawing and comic books and all of that, and artistically, my characters had better poses because that's how I would draw them, and that's how I saw. So my characters were just more lively, and I was a stickler for lip syncs because I was looking at the different shapes, and whereas the technicians didn't care as long as the lips were flapping, they didn't care, And so just the art director and the directors really liked the stuff I was doing. Now it was horrible animation. I mean, this was compared to what people are now, and students coming out of school now are so amazing. But this was the mid 90s, and I just was ahead of that curve then.
Right. So you got to basically learn on the job.
Yeah.
and improve. Also, as the technology improved, because I've only messed around with it a little bit from when I was teaching in school, and it just seemed like it was like a whole other. Didn't seem intuitive.
Yeah.
From the drawing standpoint, you know.
Yeah. I always wished that animation could be more like stop motion. Like I wish there was a maquette that you could take and pose, and then okay, do that, and then push them down and pull things with your hand.
Right.
Like having to use a mouse and click on something and slide it, and it feels very cold. And I always wish that it would be a little bit more organic like that. And I doubt it will be, because honestly, I think as the technology is going, characters are becoming more realistic in general. So you won't have to do walk cycles. You won't have to do, you don't have to worry about where the clothes is, because it's got gravity filled in, and
right.
Everything is in real time, and they have muscles, and they have, so I think it's going to become more, it was away, but I always think of it as like the holodeck in Next Generation, where you're just going to be able to say, okay, you do this, and you're just directing the characters, because right now we have so much animation and so much data and motion capture that's already put in. And if you look at video games, if you look at how fluid they are, in real time, as you're moving, that character's stopping, halting, jumping, climbing things, climbing up. So all of that information is there. They know where to put their hands. They know, where to put their feet. You don't have to do that anymore. And so I think animation in general is going to be more directing and less hands-on in the next, we'll say, decade.
There's a question from the room. JRD is going to take over, guys. I want some more questions from the chat room. J. Robert Dees asks, how much of the animation lead work informed or influenced your 2D artwork after Casper, if at all? Good question.
And none of it influenced my painting at all. Those are two separate things for me, but it did influence doing Spider-Man, doing Dreamland Chronicles, of course. I always try to take, when I do CGI, I always try to take what I learned in illustration and apply that towards that. One example is with Animal Crackers. I was art directing it as well, and I remember wanting to have lighting that was reminiscent of N.C. Wyeth. And I love how N.C. Wyeth will have here's Robin Hood, it's on the cover, and Robin Hood is completely in shadow, and the background is well lit, or there's King Arthur and Guinevere, and there's just light cutting right across them. They're in shadow from here up, and they're light on their feet. And it's just like, how bold is that? Every artist wants to have their character. I want to draw all the detail on the face. I want their face to be clear. And he will just keep a character in shadow. He'll keep a whole scene in shadow. And it was so cinematic. And I got to go and see the Brandywine Museum and see his work in person. And I was just like, this is what I want to do. And so I got a bunch of his art and some samples of that, and I sent it to the studio in Spain who was making the movie. And I said, for the lighting team, I said, this is what I want to do. And it's subtle because we didn't want it to be stark black and white. It's a kid's movie. It's not film noir. But if you look at the scenes, you'll see the characters are coming in and out of shadow. I always wanted them to be kind of moving in and out of shadow. I didn't want the lighting to be perfect. And there's always these really fun angles, where the light's kind of just cutting across and creating shapes in the background. And so I try to do that where I take what I learned in traditional illustration and apply it to the anime. So I think it's the opposite in that way.
So do you did you when you were, did you do like a style board to it all? Did you like do art to show them, kind of like you render the characters, or some pre-production stuff? Or
yeah, no. The great thing is by this time I am I'm an antique. I'm a relic. The talented people now, I don't need to show them anything as far as how to do anything or anything like that. So their ideas were fantastic. I only kind of just it is kind of like you're saying, it's a style guide type of thing. But even so, it was very, very loose. I mean, it was just, hey, here's some NC Wyeth, do this, and I would, in Photoshop kind of mock something up. And every once in a while, I'd get a shot, and I'd say, no, let's make it like this. And again, Photoshop, just clean it up. This is kind of more what I'm looking for. But it wasn't something where I had to put together a whole presentation. They were so talented that it was never put to me that way. They got it really quick, which I love.
Go ahead, Jamar.
Oh yeah, I had.
You had another question for
It's just JRD, and he's bringing them in. Scott is so skilled. Scott, you're so skilled. You're so skilled in in so many different media. Shakes fist. From digital 3D to watercolor and gouache, which one do you find the most reliable in expressing what's in your imagination? Thanks, JRD.
I don't know. The gouache is still pretty new to me. The watercolor I've been really enjoying doing, especially lately. I've been journaling, and but I don't know. I have a couple samples. Should I hold them up and talk about them, or
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Show and tell. Well,
Yeah,
I actually just So this is gouache and probably better had I done this.
There you go.
That's good.
But yeah, gouache and ink, and then sometimes this one's just I think gouache and ink as well, and then sometimes I'll do this as gouache and acrylics. And then this one is watercolor and ink. And
so you use the ink to get the super intense.
No,
red?
This is that is dye.
Okay,
the inks are really just the outlines. And then this one is acrylic gouache, which is kind of like acrylic, but it's flat, it's matte colored like gouache, and but it won't pick up with water. And so
once it dries, it's just like acrylic. Yeah,
and I really love trying different stuff, and I think sometimes I think I really want to paint something very thick, or sometimes I just want to do something really, really light. And I've been keeping these sketchbooks, which has been fun. And these are all just watercolor and ink. And there's Marv Wolfman, came out to Alabama. But I like to do, like, we went to New York last year, and I got to, we went to the museum. And I just sit around and sketch, and it's been really, really good for me to kind of do this. So I think as far as like what's the most closest to my heart and what's in my head is really going to be the watercolors and inks, because there's something that I'm doing on a daily basis, and it's more of a stream of consciousness. And whereas the big paintings are just, they're almost like just something you kind of have to get out of your head. And it's just like you have an itch and you just want to just paint something. And but when I'm done, they go in the drawer, and then I never see them again. Whereas the sketchbooks are, I have notes. They're my memories. They're my my personal thoughts and whatnot. And I think I really do like that.
I always like looking at people's sketchbooks, because I feel that that's where you see the real artist, and maybe in a way that they're discovering something about themselves. Where, I mean, it's great to see a nice finished piece, but it's like, it was very interesting to see, for instance, somebody like Frazetta, and you would see his sketches and see where he was developing, like he would do those weird abstract-y skies and stuff like that, and then you were thinking like, wow, that's really interesting. How did he come up? And then you would see, like, in the watercolor he was doing his preparatory stuff, maybe an accident happened.
Yeah.
And he was able to take that and develop it.
What I love about watercolor is it's a symbiotic relationship with the paper. You don't know what's going to happen, And once you're okay with that, I think it's wonderful. If you can let that go and just let that splotch or let that part dry or whatever, you know, and just be okay with that, I love it. And I think that's why I do the inks, because it gives me my control. This is the figure that I want to draw. This is the environment I want to draw. So I've got that down. And then as far as the watercolors go, let it just be. And it's kind of like there's the rigidness of the drawing, and then there's the looseness of the watercolors that I like. It's a little bit of letting go each time.
Yeah, I also like the fact that, and I think that's a good illustration you're showing for the student, because when you're making stuff, fantasy stuff, the only reason why you believe it is you got to put enough realism so that it's convincing.
Yeah.
And so when you go and you look at real lighting, real conditions, real places, real people, you pull that into your fantasy stuff, and it makes it much more interesting and rich, rather than just like you drawing the 5th version of somebody drawing the 5th version of Frazetta.
Yeah.
So JRD, again, he's the MVP so far of the episode. And I had the same question, Scott. What's your go bag for travel?
I've got it over here. If you guys don't mind me stepping away and grabbing it.
Yeah,
Right.
sure. And you know you're going to have to talk about the Hobbit hole, right?
I think this everything is in here. So this is my travel bag. Normally this is in there. But I got this off of eBay, and it is a Swiss medical bag from just after World War II. And you can see it kind of holds everything here. But I like it because it opens up.
Do you have your Luger in there?
It actually came with medical supplies, which
wow.
Yeah. So this is the bag opens up. I keep these are watercolor pencils because I got tired of having to erase. So I just do watercolor pencils, which eventually just, you know, bleed out.
Which ones are there? Are those the Derwit? What are those? The what are...
Pentel.
Pentel, okay.
Yeah. There's a little pencil sharpener here, in here. And then over here, I have glasses, bifocals now. Thank you very much. These are, my son made these little pouches. These are my pens, and I really like these brush pens. These are the zebra brush pens.
Yeah, those are good.
And so I've got 3 different sizes, and then I've got these. Frank Cho gave me some of these. These are those Micron. So whenever I have to do something like in the way back, I use these, and they're just so tiny, and I really like that. And then I love these. I got these, I think, on Amazon for like $19, and it's a set of paintbrushes that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know, and they're just fantastic, and so I've been using those. And then the last thing is this little watercolor set from Winsor Newton. This is the cup for your water.
Okay.
It opens up like this, and so I'm doing everything backwards and upside down.
Right.
So here's, and I put in my own colors most of the time. So I just got these little empty pans because I didn't like the colors that came with it. So I get the ones I like. And this is a little water. This is like a little flask of water. This is another little paintbrush, but this is a flask of water that'll fill up.
Oh, okay.
And so I love it. I love going out and sitting, you know, somewhere and doing that. And it's been so good for me mentally to actually go ahead. Like, and I guess I'll use this to lead up to a little bit of Animal Crackers was I don't travel well, which is why I have this Hobbit hole. And, you know, because I don't like going out. I really don't. And I had to start traveling to Los Angeles every other week. I had to fly out to London to go work with Ian McKellen and Emily Blunt. I had to go to New York to go work with Harvey Fierstein and Gilbert Gottfried and Wallace Shawn. And I say have to as if it was a chore, but when you have nervous stomach, when you get anxious, when anxiety and everything like that, it is a chore. It is a cool thing to do, but it is just, you dread going. And when I had to fly out to Spain, and I had to go to Spain a few times, I don't speak the language. I don't, eat the food. I don't, any of that. And it's a 20-hour trip because I have to fly from Nashville to Atlanta to Paris to Valencia. And, there's always a flight that's delayed and this and that, or whatever it is. And so I'm miserable, and I'm just sitting there miserable. And the whole time I'm wanting to come home. And one of the times I went with Tony Bancroft, and we were speaking at a school on one of the days because it was a big deal that Tony Bancroft, the guy who directed Mulan, was going to be in Valencia, Spain. And so there's an art school, and our director in Spain, Jaime Maestro, was like, "Can you please speak?" And so they got us both to talk. And so I did mine pretty quickly, got through mine, and Tony likes to talk. So he was he had a whole presentation and everything. He was ready to go. So they're like, "Okay, we got an hour or so. Why don't we show you around?" And so walking through the school, we came to a room where students were drawing. It was like a bowl of fruit, and they had the newsprint on the easel with the charcoal and whatnot. And I was like, man, I haven't done that since I was in college. I mean, like 30 years ago. And so they're like, "Well, if you want to," they pulled up one and they said, "Go ahead and sketch." And I did, and I sat there for an hour sketching. I didn't realize how fast the time went. Not once did I want to go home, and I was so happy. And I realized then I need to draw more when I'm traveling. I need to. Ever since I was a kid, when I would draw, the rest of the world kind of melts away. I'm just focusing on what I'm drawing, and I wasn't doing that. I was anxiously looking at everything that's going on. When am I ever going to get home? But if I just sat and I just found something to sketch and I wrote in a journal, it was so good. And so I started doing that for the rest of my trips. And I have some sketches on my computer I could show you guys. It's just some of my journal pages from that.
Sure, that'd be great.
All right, so do I do share screen?
Yeah, and then another window will come up, and then you have to point it.
You have to click on the thing that you
click
want
on
to show.
the thing, and then it should populate, and I'll bring it up.
All right. We good?
Yeah, I see you. I see us.
All right.
So all right, cool.
All right, so these are some of my sketches. This is John Krasinski. And first day meeting him and everything. Raven Simone. We had. She went to the Academy of Art too, and she had these wonderful watercolors, and just a really talented artist. Ian McKellen.
That's great. Because you're in the room or in the area with them for so long, I'm sure you have time to.
Well, yeah, I would say it's very rare that I finish one. So usually I'll just get the sketches done. I'll take a photo, and then when I get back to the hotel room, I'll finish it up. But so sometimes, like if you go back, most of them might just look like these. The middle ones might be all I'll get done, and then I'll finish them off when I get back to the hotel, because there's just no way that because I'm also supposed to be directing too.
Right.
That's quite a way to split your brain. Drawing somebody's face and then directing them.
Yeah. But they're all professionals. It's not like I didn't really need to do much,
No, were you recording them in LA, or were you recording them in England?
So LA, London, New York, LA, L.A., New York. You can actually see up top where I was.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah.
But yeah. So you go where they are. It's much cheaper to fly me out than it is to fly them out. So I can fly coach.
You have to you have to rent a Learjet.
Yeah. But and Tony was the lead artist of Kronk on The Emperor's New Groove. So it was like he and Patrick Warburton knew each other, which was kind of cool. Emily and John, and then so Bear McCreary, our composer, he came out to Nashville to record the score.
Really, in Nashville?
Yeah, it was an old church. So the story with that, and it's such a sweet story. My son Logan, you can see him at the bottom. My son Logan, he loves music scores, and Bear knew that, and so would always send him, because Bear did the score for Walking Dead, Outlander, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., et cetera, et cetera. So he's got just wonderful, wonderful scores in this great career. And so he invited us to come out to Los Angeles so we could, watch him record, which was amazing. Problem is, it was in the middle of school year, and he was in junior high at the time. And I couldn't bring him. I could fly out, but I couldn't bring, my son. And Bear just decided, you know what, screw it. And he picked up his team, and he found an orchestra in Nashville, and he recorded out in Nashville. So that way my son could come out to school.
That's awesome.
Which is the most wonderful thing. And so now with an orchestra, I didn't have to direct anything. I was just told to be quiet and sit in the corner. So I could just sketch a lot. So, I had several days of just sketching, and there's so many people, and so many, there's, days where they had the woodwinds and days where they had the brass and the strings and whatnot. And then this is some sketches I did in Valencia.
Nice.
But and my handwriting is really bad, so I actually went, and this is all digital handwriting. So I got rid of my handwriting so I could show this. But yeah, you wouldn't want. I think you saw some of my other thing, but these are just other ones I did along the way.
And Scott, what do you? Not to say you have to do anything with these, but they're so gorgeous. Like, do you share those, or like, are you printing?
No,
like
I
journal or
Netflix said that they might run an article, like Animation Magazine might use some of those for an article or something. But in all honesty, I was thinking of maybe doing like a making of book or something like that. But to be honest, the fates have not been kind to me on anything on this. So I have these sketches. They're sitting in a drawer with the rest of my art, and I don't know. We'll see what happens with them one day. I'd really like to, because those are kind of just cobbled together. They're not like in a sketchbook like this. They were larger drawings that I was still kind of learning the process as I was going, and now I feel a lot more comfortable with my sketches, and a lot more comfortable with my storytelling and where to write and whatnot. And I think I'm trying to get my handwriting a little better, because I just have doctor's handwriting, so just, but I would, I think for me, it's a part of, if I get to make another film, it's a part of the process now. It's both mental health for me, and it's also just a way to capture the moments.
So I don't want to bring the room down, but I think something that the average consumer may not know about this project is that this happened a while ago. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Can you touch on a little bit where you kind of wrapped up production into where we are today? Yeah. So we started production of the film in 2014, and we finished the end of 2016. And at the end of 2016, we got a wonderful deal from a studio, and it turned out that they were going bankrupt. And so basically our film became like an asset in a bankruptcy. And we had to fight for 6 months to get our film back, and we did. Another studio came along 6 months later. They went under. And then the third studio came along,
and they sat on the film for 14 months, and we finally got it back in the end of January or end of 2019. And that's when Netflix stepped in. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure Netflix isn't going to go bankrupt anytime soon.
Right.
So I was
Right.
pretty. But the funny thing is that back in 2016, Netflix really wasn't a player. And they had all the Disney stuff, and they had, they weren't really looking for animation at the time. So they weren't really on our radar, and we weren't on their radar. So it was kind of crazy how that all worked out, because it's I had 3 years of just bliss, 3 years of making a movie and learning and all of that goes with it, and then the 3 bad years of, oh my God, what's happening, and lawsuits and bankruptcies, and here I am, 13 days from my film finally coming out, and I have to consciously erase those 3 years, those bad 3 years, and just focus on the positives, and focus on how blessed I was and how wonderful an experience that it was. And so I've happiness doesn't come automatically. You have to work at it. You have to, on a daily basis, remind yourself how good things are, how bad they could be, I guess every once in a while you need to turn around and look and see how far you've come. Because you can't see it, and so that's my daily for the last 2 weeks, because I wanted to make like a month out. I was like, okay, for the next 30 days I'm going to be positive, and I've been trying to do that, and it's been good for me. And it's not like even on a daily basis bad stuff still haunts us. We still get shocks and surprises and worries, but I did something that not too many people were able to do, and for better or for worse, whether people like the movie or not, I did something. I accomplished something, and I'm just trying to just stay positive and be proud of at least accomplishing that much.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the process from where it went from the book into being animated in China, right? Because it was animated in
Spain, Valencia,
in Spain. Okay. Yeah. There's a whole other burgeoning industry in Europe of animation that we sort of think of animation as either like the United States or Japan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We think like there's just these two, anime, or Pixar, Disney, but there's obviously a big channel of stuff being done in France, between France and Japan. I see now people are teaming up, and so there's a lot. It seems like there's a lot of opportunity out there, and a lot of 2D on top of it. I mean, we listen to Tony podcast all the time, and so it's interesting to hear how. And all my students I teach all want to do 2D. Yeah. Everybody wants to do 2D,
Well, if you can do 2D, you can do 3D, but not the other way around.
Right.
It's just I remember working with Tony for the first time, because he and I were always, we were friends, but we were always not competitive, jokingly competitive about, 2D's dead, no, it's not, that kind of thing. And we worked on I think it was like a Hasbro commercial, and it was like a miniature golf game, and there was these little aliens that he wanted me to animate, and he came to my office and he sat and he worked with me, taught me the principles of squash and stretch and anticipation and all that stuff that he just came naturally to him from all of his years at Disney. And I swear to this day that was the best thing I ever animated, because he was walking me through those principles that I would have never learned doing animation the way that I was doing it. Now, again, those principles are now taught in school, but back in the late 90s, it wasn't, but so, to go back to your original question, we finished the books. I was working with IDW at the time, and that's where all my books were published from them. And I had published, I think, like 8 or 9 or 10 books with them. And for one reason or another, and I'm not going to say anything bad about IDW, but I didn't get paid for the work. And we had invested a lot of money for the art and marketing and whatever else we were doing. I never got paid, and it put us in a tailspin. And financially, our house was in foreclosure. We were on food stamps. They repoed my car.
Wow.
And this was just at the time where Hollywood was picking up. Disney optioned Pet Robots, MTV optioned Hyperactive, Fox optioned The Luckiest Boy. So I was getting a lot of interest from studios for these books, and they wanted to make them into movies. And so my wife says, this looks like it's going somewhere. Let's give this a shot. You keep working on this, and I'll go back to work. And so she went back to work, and she supported us. And she did that for 2 years. It was 2 years. Well, after the first year, we met Harvey Weinstein, and he loved the script. I wrote a script for it. Loved the script, and he says, "But you need to show me 2 things before I take this movie. One, you have to show me an animated short. You gotta show me what the animation is going to look like. And 2, you need bigger names. I can't sell Scott Sava. You're nobody." So that's where I called Tony, who was my friend, and I said, "Tony, will you lend your name to my film?" And he said, "Absolutely, yeah, that's fine." I called another friend of mine, Dean Laurie, who wrote Arrested Development, and he said, "Sure, no problem." So then it was a matter of us getting the animated short, to which I called my friend Jaime out in Valencia, Spain, and he produced the animated short. A few months later, Harvey saw it, loved it, and said, "Okay, let's make this movie. I'm going to meet you in Valencia, Spain, because I want to inspect the studio before we put money into it." I'd never been to Spain. I was, just barely making by because my wife was working, and I had to borrow money from family to afford a ticket to fly out to Spain. I had to buy some new clothes and whatnot as well, and a bag and everything else. But I flew out. To the 20 hours, I get to Spain, and he doesn't show up. I mean, it's like,
man.
It's one thing like when you meet someone, you go to a meeting and the person does, "Okay, I lost an hour." But I mean, I lost days of my life and thousands of dollars that I borrowed from family. And
he didn't call you after you were there and say, "Sorry."
I had an email in my inbox when I landed saying he wasn't going to be able to make it. But, scheduling conflict, as they say, it's Valencia, Spain. It's like you didn't see that coming, I left 20 hours ago. You could have let me know then. But anyway, so we wound up obviously not doing that. And a friend of mine from when I worked at Atari, Harry Mock, he said, "I'm going to find you some money." And he spent a year tracking down money in 2013, and then 2014, he met a guy who knew a guy or whatever, found some money in China. And we went from 2 years before that, we were on food stamps. And then now we had $10 million in the bank account.
Whoa.
And we're just night and day. It wasn't our money to play with, but, we at least were able to take a little bit and pay all of our family back the money that we owed them, and, get the house out of foreclosure and do that. But we suddenly had a movie, and then the next thing we needed to do was the casting, and that was just a really bizarre experience. So
did you have to get a casting agent? Did Tony say get a casting agent?
I had a friend, and it was good. Like all of these people, when I was making those movies, and I was working on Casper, and I was working on Power Rangers, you meet people, and so like I met Tony, and I met Dean, and I met this guy Jamie Thomason, who's a casting director for Disney, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll help you." And he said it was a $10 million budget, so we're just looking for one big name. We just want one big name to attach. The rest of it are going to be regular voice actors, because voice actors are the best anyhow. I love working with the Tara Strongs and the James Arnold Taylors of the world. They're amazing. we weren't looking to do a theatrical release. We were just trying to get, it's my first movie, want to keep it small. We wanted to add one big name. We had budget for one name. And so Jamie asked me, who do you have in mind? And I said, the only name that really came up other than Patrick Warburton, who for Brock, was Ian McKellen, because I was reading Horatio P. Huntington in Gandalf's voice, just how it was. And a few weeks later, I got a call from him. He said, Ian McKellen signed on. He's going to do it. And I was like, holy crap, I get to meet Gandalf, you know? and then something really weird happened. Because Ian McKellen signed on, Sylvester Stallone wanted the role of Bullet Man. Danny DeVito wanted the role of Chesterfield. Raven Simone wanted the role of Binkley. You know, we started to get some bigger names to come on. And I was like, we can't afford this, but how do you turn down Sylvester Stallone? How do you turn down Danny DeVito? And so I went back to the investors and I said, could you maybe give us another couple $1 million so we could do this? And after a little bit, they said, sure. And so we said, great. We signed DeVito and Stallone and Harvey Fierstein and Gilbert Gottfried and everybody else. But we didn't have the two leads, Owen and Zoe, the husband and wife. Jamie calls me, and mind you, this is 2014, so please cut me a little slack. Right. Jamie calls me and says, I got a name for you for Owen, John Krasinski. And I said, I have no idea who he is. And he says, he's in The Office. I never saw The Office. He's like, well, he's really funny. Just trust me. And I said, okay, I trust you. You did well by me so far, so I'll trust you on this. So early 2015, I go flying out to Los Angeles to meet John and Danny and Raven. And they're wonderful. They're just fantastic. And John is we're in the studio, and Jamie and Tony are in the booth listening in. But, you know, we're just kind of getting to know each other. And John's just being the nice guy that John is. And he's like, I just want to tell you, because my wife just loves that script. She just thought it was amazing. She was just so complimentary. But I didn't know who his wife was because I didn't know who he was. So I was just like, oh, thanks, man. And I walked away. You know? and fortunately, Tony and Jamie heard this. And Jamie comes running in and he slides in. And he says, well, would your wife want to be in the movie? And I'm like, what? Why would his wife want to be? He's like, shut up. He's like, would your wife want to be in the movie? And John's like, sure. And so picks up his phone and he tapes, hey, babe, you want to be in the movie? A couple minutes later, she replies back and goes, yeah. And that's how Emily Blunt came on the film. And it was just dumb luck, you know. But yeah, once we had Emily and John and the whole cast, we realized, okay, we have enough to pay everybody, but this can't be a direct-to-DVD movie anymore. Mm-hmm. It has to be a better movie. So we had to go out and we had to raise another $6 million. And so that was tough. We wound up doing it, but it was tough. And but for the next.
So now, how do you do that? Do you talk to people that know people that go, this my brother-in-law's got an extra $1 million in the garage?
That's exactly what we did. I mean, we got $1 million from a guy in Korea. We got another $5 million from a fisherman in Seattle. And the fisherman Seattle guy came to me from a guy who contacted me on Facebook. I mean, it was just, hey, I heard I heard through the grapevine you're looking for money, you know. And I mean, I live in Franklin, Tennessee in a hobbit hole. Who do I know who's got money? You know, I don't know anybody with money. So
now you're not worried about losing fingers or anything now, are you?
No. I think I got enough Sicilians on my side of the family to where but no, it was an experience. But the funny thing was that as cool as the cast was, I really, really connected with the musicians. It was there's something. I mean, we got music from Queen, Michael Bublé, Huey Lewis and the News, Toad the Wet Sprocket, Howard Jones. There was something, and I'm sure part of it was the fact that to a musician, making a movie is pretty cool. To an actor, it's another day at the office. Right. Yeah. And so while they were all genuinely nice, it's not like they were excited about it, whereas, like Michael Bublé would call me every day and say, yeah, I mean, hey, you're excited about this. And what do you think about that? And, and Huey Lewis would fly in, to Nashville for a gig, and hey, let's get together for lunch. Let's talk about the movie. I would get calls from Toad the Wet Sprocket. I would get calls from Howard Jones from London, and they just want to talk about the movie, and they were just the nicest people. And I think where the connection really was as artists, they understood the creation. If you look at musicians, they take nothing and they create something from it. Just like we look at a blank canvas or a piece of paper and we create something from that. Whereas actors, as talented as they are given a script. They're given the clothes to wear. They're put, told where to stand. They're given direction from a director. And again, what they do is completely amazing. But I think I just had more of a connection with these musicians because they understood there was nothing, and then I made something. And now I'm terrified that people are going to hate that thing I made, And so I think there was that connection that I really, really cherish, and I loved. It's funny. I would get calls from Michael Bublé. He was like terrified that no one's going to like his new album. I'm like, dude, you're Michael Bublé. People are going to like your album. It's like, and I'm thinking, how is somebody who's made this many albums? He's worth this much money. He's good. How is he still nervous about this? I mean, this is my first movie. I can understand that. Why are you still nervous? But I talk to Huey, I'll talk to Howard, I'll talk to the guys, and they're the same way. I don't think you ever get over it as a creator. I don't think you ever lose that fragility of.
Or if you do, it could kind of destroy you, I suppose, in a way, because then if you think that you have nothing to risk, that it's
I think and you hear stories about artists who become complacent, and but fortunately the ones I met, the musicians I met, they were still very much still seeking, still searching, still trying to improve, and I loved it. I just loved, and I still do. I recently got to interview Howard and Huey and Dean and Glenn from Toad the Wet Sprocket and Bear McCreary, the composer. And we did like a Zoom call and we recorded it, and I did little commentaries for Sony for the album for Sony Masterworks, and just talking with them about art and talking to them about creation was so natural and so fun. And even at I'm not saying at Huey's age, like he's like extremely old, but the career he's had, and
does he still have the hearing thing? Because I know.
Yeah. Fortunately, he does, but he is still so. He's still, music and art are still a wonder to him. He's still so. It's still a matter of like how I feel right now is how he still feels, and I love that.
I think you when you study and you read up on the old Hollywood guys, the people that kept their energy in their career, their whole career. They were, and it must have been such an enlightening process, even though you'd been working in entertainment, to go through the process yourself, as opposed to read, the story of somebody else going through it. You're actually going through it. You're having to go through the highs and the lows and the ups and the downs. And I've heard that from other people. You go through, you think it's going to happen, and then one little thing goes wrong. The director leaves, or the star, because I can't do it now. And, stuff you have no control over.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things go wrong. It's just, especially in a movie. I mean, a lot of things. I mean, not too many people know that originally we had Robin Williams attached to the film.
Wow.
And then, right before we were going to film, he killed himself. And I mean, things go wrong. We've been sued. We've dealt with bankruptcies, but I think that is what I'm trying to get out of this whole experience, is to walk away grateful for the experience, for the goods and the bads, the Harvey Weinsteins and you know, and everything else.
Well, you know, he's not well liked, right?
I've heard.
It might be for standing people up in Spain. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. That's the least of his things he's going to go to hell for. Yeah, we just it was an amazing experience, and you know, just the next, like I said, the next 13 days, I'm just going to try to soak it all in, and like I said, I hope I get to do it again. I want to fill up a sketchbook or two, you know, doing it. And
well, are you developing other? Because I mean, that seems to be like, well, you've got this one getting ready to be baked. You got one that you're mixing, and then you got one that you're.
Mike, when 6 months into the production of Animal Crackers, I had pet robots all lined up and ready to go. I had Leonardo DiCaprio wanting to play Vandenberg or Meisterberger. I had Michael Bay attached. It kept coming down to money. Like, I don't have a problem with coming up with projects because I got a ton of them. I don't have a problem even getting cast and producing it. It's money, and you know, if I was a billionaire, I'd be dangerous, but you know, I'm not. You know, I'm an artist.
So hopefully, at some point, you'll do well enough that you can start partially financing your own.
And that's the funny thing is going back to the original thing of all I ever wanted to do was Spider-Man, and I did that. So I can't say that making a movie was like my lifelong dream. It was something I came up with after I did Spider-Man. And excuse me, it's just one of those things where it's a heck of a lot of fun. I really did love it, and I would like to do it again because I'd like to improve. I'd like to take the things I learned on the first one and do it better on the second one. I love storytelling. I love writing books. I love painting. I love making animation. I love whatever it is. I love storytelling. But if I never make another movie, I'd be okay. It was fun, and I would love to do it again. And I have a ton of other ideas. But you know, how often does someone get someone from China to write them a check for $10 million? That was kind of out of the left field kind of thing, and I can't expect that to happen twice. I understand, hey, it's highly more likely now that you've made a movie and it's going out to 200 million people on Netflix. You got a great cast, it's a good-looking movie, but there's no guarantee. I mean, there's tons of people who made a movie once and then never made another movie. There's tons of people who wrote a book once and never wrote another book. So I don't want to put that kind of pressure on myself to saying I'm a failure if I don't make another movie. Right. I'll move on to whatever it is and be thankful for what I got a chance to do.
But everything is all, I mean, I was just reading this afternoon. I mean, with what's going on in Hollywood, what's going on with the pandemic, you've got these companies that are desperate to produce material because people want entertainment, right? Yeah. They want to be able to forget what's going on outside their window or on their TV set. In animation, you know, if actors can't get together in Hollywood and do stuff yet.
No, you can get them into a studio one-on-one and just record their lines. Some person's in the booth, the other person's in the sound room, and that can work. Again, there's no reason why I shouldn't get more work. People are looking for projects. I've got a ton of projects. It's just I don't have that experience. I wasn't responsible for raising that money for the film. Those were people who called me. Those were people who, they got lucky. They knew a guy, knew a guy, knew a guy, knew a guy. So again, it was such a fluke, such a miracle that if it happens again, I'll be thankful. But if it does, I just, I don't know. And I'm not as skilled of a producer in speaking the language, especially to the studios. I'm not a good salesman. I'm just not,
Too much of an artist and not enough of a producer, kind of?
I'm too honest, I think. It's funny. They want to be sold. They want you to lie to them. They want you to tell them that it's going to be the greatest film ever and it's going to be this and it's going to be that. They want the sales pitch. They want that used car salesman pitch. They demand it. I can't tell you how many phone calls and meetings I've been in where they're not feeling that kind of energy, and the people, they want that they want to see a show. They want to see a show, and I don't have that ability. I don't have that ability to lie to them. I don't have that ability to entertain them. Like I said, Tony would never lie, but Tony has that ability to charm you. He has that ability to talk about art in a way that makes you, and that's a gift. Everybody's got their gifts. This just isn't my gift, and
Right.
so, like I said, I know my role. I know what I'm good at, and where I can improve. But as much as I have tried to become a better producer, and just even going out and meeting the cast and flying here and learning how to adapt to those situations, I don't have that natural ability. I can't tell you how many times I've sat next to Danny DeVito or Ian McKellen, eating a salad or drinking, some soup or something like that in complete silence because I cannot carry a conversation. I'm like, I should say something, but I don't know what to say. It wasn't until I got to Sylvester Stallone that I wrote down questions, like a month earlier. And I was like, okay, I've got questions, and I read them, and then Stallone was able to tell me stories and shadow box, and because he knew that routine, he knew, okay, this person wants to hear stories about how I made Rocky. They want to hear stories about this, and he was able to go into that. But you put me in a room with somebody, and I don't have that ability to say, so how about them Bears, and what about the weather, and I don't have that. It's just never been one of my things. My head's always down, or my head's in the clouds, and that's just who I am. And as much as I'm trying, that's what Hollywood wants. They want that personality. They want you to wow them, and that's a tall order for someone like me.
I have some questions from the room, Scott, and this has been a fantastic episode so far. Just like the whole story of all of this, and even touching back on some of our past guests who have had that same kind of really hurry up and wait long window between a project that seemed like it was right there and then it wasn't, and then you know what I'm saying. This is just the making of all of this stuff is really interesting.
It's insane.
John Patrick Green, hello John, says, were the two graphic novels made while the movie was in production or before? What was making them like compared to the film? Thank you.
That's a good question. So if you remember, if you were around for this part, I was talking about it was around 2010, 2011. I was publishing a bunch of kids' books with IDW, and Animal Crackers was one of them. Another book was Magic Carpet, and by the time we realized that we weren't getting paid and we kind of broke things off, Animal Crackers and Magic Carpet were going to print, and they didn't. We stopped it, and so they were solicited. I think if you even go to Amazon, you can still. I think Animal Crackers might have gotten taken away, but I think you can still see Magic Carpet. But the books were done, and they sat, and so the movie was always based off of that book that was finished. It was just never printed. Once we got the money to make the movie and the cast was on, it was pretty easy for me to go to my literary agent, Judy Hansen, and she was able to sell it to First Second Books, and they picked it up, and they wanted a second book, like a companion book, and so we put that one out as well. But my first love is always the original book.
Okay. And also, JRD asks, what is your writing process?
Oh, it's probably as chaotic as my painting process. I've taught myself, when I first started doing books like Ed's Terrestrials and Pet Robots, I was just kind of winging it. But I think I've got to the point now where I do a pretty good outline. I actually just wrote a screenplay with my son, who's now 17. Both boys are 17. And we wrote a screenplay together, and we did a really good job. We start off with Post-its, and we write down, who the characters and what are their arcs, and then what are the environments, what are the, what's the world like, and then we put it together into an outline, And once we have the outline, the rest of it's pretty easy. I'll usually write 5 to 10 pages a day, and I could crank out a screenplay in a matter of a couple weeks. But the hard part is the outline, is to tie all of those those story bits together and make sure the characters are good.
So how did you learn to write a screenplay? Because it's different to write a script for yourself for a book, and screenplays have a very specific format. And as we've heard, there are people that read a screenplay and go, "This is a really good screenplay." There's like a way of writing a screenplay that reads well. Like it reads.
I promise you, Mike, mine don't read well. I have no idea what makes a good screenplay. I'll say this: back in the late 2000s, before, I don't know, say around 2010, IDW, the whole thing with IDW happened, and I was optioning my stuff, but after a while, the rights would come back to me from Disney or Fox or whatever. And my buddy Kevin Grievous, you saw him; he was Samson in the movie, but he wrote Underworld, and we would talk 3-4 times a week, and he was just trying to encourage me because I was really upset about what happened with IDW, and he says, "Well, why don't you write a screenplay?" And I said, I don't know anything about writing screenplays. I went to art school, And he said, "Dude, I was a microbiologist when I wrote Underworld. You don't need a degree. You don't need any schooling. Just write it." And that was his advice, and I did. And so I wrote 3 screenplays, and I don't know if they were any good. I honestly don't. But what happened was, fortunately, I was able to get Dean Laurie, who was a very good screenwriter, to come and help me. And so when I was still shopping it, I would go ahead and I was. He was writing Arrested Development, and he would read what I had written that night or whatever, and then in the morning on his drive to work, because you're always sitting in traffic in LA, he would call me up and give me notes and give me advice. And so he was kind of giving me free advice along the way, and so that really helped me as well. And so when I finally got the money, I was able to hire him, and then we got to sit down, and I got to see how it was done and whatnot. We didn't talk about formatting. It was never anything like that. It was just, is this good story? Is this not good story? So I never, like I said, the people in Hollywood who read screenplays, they're looking to see if you bolded this and it's indented in the right way. They're not looking for a good read. They're looking to see if it's written in a way that is the traditional way or whatever it is. So I don't really. Whenever I hear someone say something is a good screenplay, I never really take it very seriously, because the Hollywood executives rarely, like Harvey Weinstein, didn't read my script. He had his people read a script, and they did what's called coverage, which is it's like a book report, and so it's like, yeah, I love it. I was like, no, I saw the book report. You didn't read it, but they recommended that you make this movie. They said it was a good script. So I think the people who do coverage, they know what they're talking about, but the Hollywood executives never do. I doubt they ever even read those things.
Right. Yeah. There's supposedly something like 70,000 scripts floating around Hollywood at any one time. Some crazy number like that, of like all these scripts floating around, and this person hasn't, like, actors have readers that read stuff for them. They don't read the script, but they say, like, Stallone has guys who read scripts for him.
Yeah, I bet. And when you go to a Hollywood executive's office, they proudly have a bookshelf full of scripts just sitting there. It's like full of hundreds of scripts sitting there. They've never read a single one of them, but it makes them feel important, But it's great. It's crazy.
So now, is there going to be is there a red carpet for the Netflix premiere? Are you doing that? We
were supposed to do a premiere, but COVID, shot that down. We're trying to see if we can talk to some of the actors to at least share a Twitter or tweet or something like that, about it. But everybody's kind of, that's been the hardest part. Was I was in the studio with them in 2015. This is 5 years ago. And
wow, yeah.
so, I mean, to put some perspective, when I saw John and Emily last was, I think it was winter 2017. And it was in Pinewood Studios. She was getting ready for Mary Poppins. And John was saying, hey, I just wrote a script. It's like a horror movie. And Emily's going to do it with me. We had so much fun working on Animal Crackers together because that was our first movie together. We had so much fun working on Animal Crackers together. We're going to do a live action together. Yeah. Since that meeting, they have finished the first movie. It went on to do gangbusters. She's been Mary Poppins. He's been Jack Ryan. They've finished the second one, a sequel, Quiet Place 2. And my movie still hasn't come out, you know? So it's been so long that they've done, you know, they've had other kids. They've had a whole lifetime. So I have to be okay with, you know, they probably don't even remember who I am at this point. You know, it was, you know, a fond memory if they think about it, if someone, but, you know, I was, you know, kind of just another thing, another job. And again, everybody was extremely nice. They were fantastic to work with. They were gracious. They took pictures with me. They signed, you know, I was totally non-professional. Here, can you sign this? Here, can you take a picture with me doing that? Here, can you send a video to my wife saying hi? You know, everything. I really, there was.
You got Ian McKellen to say Balrog.
I got him to say, in the movie, he says, "Now fly, you fool." You know, I actually wrote that. You know, but I did a painting of Gandalf, and he signed it to my boys. He even put Gandalf's little rune in it too. He says, "To Brendan and Logan." I got Wallace Shawn to sign a Princess Bride painting I did, and I got Stallone to sign a Rocky painting I did. So, I mean, I was in full-on geek mode every single time. I didn't care.
They might find that refreshing, though. You know.
I don't know. But I was like, I'm never going to see them again. And like I said, it was. I was bold enough to ask if I could do it, and they were kind enough to do it. And then after that, I stayed out of their hair because, again, I can't carry on a conversation. So it wasn't like following them around saying, you know, when you made this movie, were you thinking about, you know, I didn't have that kind of stuff, which I think might have annoyed them a little more.
So after everything was over, did Stallone say, "Hey, lose my phone number"?
No, they would never do that. Like I said, everybody was so nice. I mean, you know, Raven Simone, she gave me a photograph of her as Charlie Chaplin. Like, she was dressed up as Charlie Chaplin, and she's like, "Can you do a painting of me?" And she says, I was like, "Okay, are you gonna do a painting of me?" And she says, "Yeah." And so, you know, I did a painting of her, and she loved it. She posted it. She never did a painting of me. She still owes me a painting. So, you know, but you know, she went on, she was doing The View, and then she went back to doing Raven, and then now she's married. And, you know, I'm sure if I saw her again, she would totally remember and she would apologize. But they have a life. I can't even comprehend what they have to deal with their celebrityness. I mean, I couldn't handle a day of that, much less, you know, trying to raise kids and having a career and just a life. I couldn't do it. So I try not to be another burden on them, at least, you know, afterwards. While I'm in the studio, I'm going to burden you at least for a sketch, you know, for a sign, you know, sign one of my sketches, or, you know, take a picture with me. But other than that,
Scott, I'm amazed that, and maybe you just didn't talk about it, did you have any help or assistance while you were going through this process? You know, or just
you talking about
on your hand, like, do you have somebody that's going to answer some emails, or, you know?
Oh God, no. I'm handling right now for Animal Crackers. I'm handling all of the social media. I'm answering every single YouTube comment. I think there's about 10,000 YouTube comments. I've answered every single one of them. Seriously, go and look, but it's crazy. But I will answer every Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Wow. I've been posting every day. But I've also been doing radio interviews, things like this. And, you know, if I can, I try to speak to students and whatnot. But I'm it. You know, there's no other mechanism for marketing a Netflix movie. This is it. So I'm happily doing it. I mean, Tony does stuff as well. We'll get some of the other people who are working on it, and I know Sony Masterworks, who has the music rights, they're doing stuff, and Macmillan Books is doing some stuff. But I'm just saying, as far as the movie goes, yeah, it's all on me. So anytime you see anything, it's me. I'm making all of the animated GIFs on Giphy. So if you go and you see the people there,
I saw those.
I am having fun. I'm going through the entire movie, and I've done, I think, 200 something of them in the last 4 days, and I'm a GIF making machine, and I love it.
Now this does very well. Would there be a sequel?
I've already got a sequel written. I've got it all ready to go. We've already spoken to the agents for the cast, and they're ready to come back.
Did you talk to the fisherman? Is he ready to come back? Is he ready to give you more money?
No, the fisherman wasn't too happy about how long it took to get paid back. So I don't think he was prepared for for all of what we went through. But I would love it if Netflix, if it does well on Netflix, and Netflix would want to give it a shot, because I would love to do it with a home, because we made the movie without a home. We made it completely independently with no studio, with no backup or anything, and I would love to do it with Netflix there. Just to have a sounding board. Hey, is this looking okay? Hey, what do you think? I mean, because it was just, like Tony and I would go, this look good? I don't know. And we'd argue about stuff, Chesterfield should be fat. No, I think he should be thin. No, he should be fat. It was like, none of it was bad, but it was like, whatever. Like there was a point in the movie where, and I wrote it, but it was like Ian McKellen's character was monologuing. And I just got to the point, because again, I'm not a professional screenwriter, and nothing on Dean, who might have said he's monologuing. I was like, it'll be fine, But what happened was, we were listening to it. We were looking at the storyboards, and he's like, okay, here's why I'm the bad guy, and here's what I want out of everything. Again, just paraphrasing. But it was Ian McKellen, so it was cool because it's Ian McKellen. He could read the phone book, and it sounds cool.
Right, yeah.
But I was like, there's more we could do here. And so I was talking to Jamie, our casting director, and I said, what if he breaks out into song? And Jamie says, well, there's two problems with that. He says, one, Ian's a Shakespearean actor. He doesn't sing. And the other is, we don't know how to write music. I was like, we'll figure it out. And he says, well, what kind of music do you want? And I said, well, my kids really like Phineas and Ferb. And he's like, oh, I know... is it Jeff and Swampy, the two guys who created Phineas and Ferb? They write the music for every episode. So he calls them up, and they write a song for us. Within a month, Ian McKellen is doing a duet with Gilbert Gottfried, and it's the funniest thing. And it's just like, had we been with the studio, they might have said, no, that's the stupidest thing we've ever heard, why would you waste the money on it? Why would you do it? But we were just like, hey, this sounds like fun. Let's go and do it. And so I did like that. And I don't want to lose that, but I would love the partnership of being able to call Netflix and say, hey, what do you think of a duet between Gilbert Gottfried and Ian McKellen, and have that advice.
There's another question from John. What animated shows, movies, and comics are you watching / reading these days? Do you have time to read anything right now?
Besides email?
Except email and YouTube comments. But no, I haven't read comics, but animated. I haven't seen an animated series in a while. I saw Onward as far as a movie goes. But I think the one that impacted me the most was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Was just, being a Spider-Man fan, the whole time I'm watching it, I'm going, that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted my comic book to do, but I didn't have the technology. I didn't have the skills to do that. But that was just gorgeous. It was so fun, and it was perfect. So But it's funny because I had a meeting with a studio regarding the Dreamland Chronicles just last week, and they were asking me, how do you envision the Dreamland Chronicles as a series? And I said, structurally and storytelling wise, and just the heart of it, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it was just probably the perfect series, as far as animation goes and everything. I still think I might want to do CGI, but as far as just the heart of it all, I would do that. And I wish I had time to watch more animation. I mean, I was just watching clips of Steven Universe, and I've tried, a couple other animated, recently animated stuff, but just the time to get into something like that just never seems to happen now with everything going on.
Well, you must be exhausted by the end of the day some days when you're going through all this stuff. It's like it takes energy to pay attention to watch something as opposed to look at something.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I will. I'm in bed usually by 9:30, and I'll have my iPad and I'll watch a TV episode or a bit of a movie or something like that, and I'll be asleep by 10. And I'm up at 6, and I always have just a ton of energy in the morning. It's nice and quiet. I light a candle in the Hobbit hole, and I'll sketch. I'll do the YouTube stuff. I'll do some GIFs, and then family wakes up a couple hours later, and whatnot. But my energy is usually in the morning, and I just don't have the energy at night to get into it. We watched as a family for dinner, at least during the pandemic. We've been watching an episode of The West Wing every night. And so that's our family. Let's watch something that makes you think. Let's watch something that's intelligent that you could learn, about government and whatnot. So we like that.
We can't let you go, Scott, without you talking about your studio space.
Well, it's a little dirty, but here.
Well, you don't have to do a 360, but just talk about it. Like, how did it come to be like that?
That's fine. I'll do that while so this was our basement, and this is so that was our bookshelf, and over there we've got a fireplace and a TV.
Okay.
And that's the exit. You can see the Post-its because I'm keeping notes for myself.
Yeah.
And my drawing table over there. But yeah, it was a basement. And it was in my art studio, and we found black mold in it one year, and so we had to clear the whole thing out and bleach it. And a buddy of mine, Ron, said, "You know what? You're always saying you're a Hobbit. When we have to, bring everything back, let's make it look like a Hobbit hole." And it looks expensive, but it was all styrofoam. It's hand painted to look like wood. These are plastic siding, cut out of a plywood and whatnot. So it's like a movie set. It's all facade, but it is a magical place to work. It really is. It
makes
just,
you want to come down there and work.
It really does. I mean, I never get tired of being down here, and it's just I think it's like, oh my God, I hope we never move. What would I do? But it is really a magical place. I love to paint, and since I'm on the ground floor, I'll see deer and bunnies and turtles and whatnot walking by my window, and so it does feel very hobbity, just for that. And it is you guys are welcome anytime. Come on by and say hi.
I think it's also interesting that you're down there, and does John Pomeroy live down there as well as Tony?
And Tim Hodge is here as well.
So you're getting like a whole enclave of
I got to meet
animation people.
Here, I'll show you. So John Pomeroy did the storyboards for the film, and he did them traditionally because he's old. And so I have a whole bunch of these storyboards. That's Gilbert and Ian McKellen's character. But I have hundreds and hundreds of these because he would do them, and then my wife would go and pick them up in his mailbox, and he would scan each one in, and then we would send them off to Spain. but they're just amazing. And the history that John had of, he worked with Roy Disney. He founded Don Bluth Animation Studio. He's just an incredibly talented artist. And we got Tom Bancroft, Tim Hodge, and John Pomeroy and I. We actually got to do a gallery show at Lipscomb University where they teach, and so that was really cool to see their work, framed and up on the wall next to my work, and I was very flattered. But yeah, it's really cool having them here. It's weird because I haven't seen them in 6 months, but it is.
You're just seeing them virtual. Right? We're all seeing everybody like this now.
Yeah, we would get together every once in a while and do a lunch. Tim Hodge and I would go and paint. So we would meet places and paint, and because he's getting really good at plein air painting, and so Tim's always the one who's like, hey, I'm going to go paint, over by this, we're going to go to the this old building or whatever it might be. And so we sit out there and we paint, and we talk, and we have lunch. That was always good because, he's always encouraging me to get out of the house, because that's the thing. I'll never leave. Like, quarantine, what quarantine?
Right.
Last question from JRD regarding the movie. When will a CD be released of the score?
I think the 17th. So like in 6 days.
That's super soon.
Yeah. You can pre-order the album now, and I think you get the Toad song for free when you do. And then for the score, I think the score is the same date too. I'm thinking about the other one, but yeah. And I could check with Bear and I could check with Sony. But what I really like was I got to do the album cover for Bears. And that was really cool because, how often do you have a guy named Bear McCreary doing the orchestration for a movie called Animal Crackers? So I painted him as a bear, conducting a room full of animals, which was kind of fun.
Now, when you came up with the concept of eating an animal cracker and turning it into an animal, did you think, I'm sure somebody else must have done that idea?
I very rarely do that because I always figure it's already been done with everything. Every idea has already been done. Right. You're just, every idea I have, I got from something else. The Dreamland Chronicles was Little Nemo and Slumberland. Pet Robots was probably, it was a little bit of Willy Wonka, a little bit of Short Circuit. I can trace things back to The Last Starfighter or The Hobbit or, The Never-Ending Story or whatever it is. Your ideas aren't original and their ideas weren't original and so on and so forth. And so I don't really usually worry about that. It's funny. I didn't even really worry about, because my names are so generic, it's Animal Crackers, Magic Carpet, Pet Robots. I don't really put a lot of thought into the names either. Because I always think I'm going to come up with something better later on, and I never do. But when the movie was announced, that's when you find out, because that's when I started to go. There was a Japanese anime, Doraemon or something like that, where a kid made some animal crackers and turned his family into animals. There was a children's book where a kid baked some animal crackers and then turned into animals. No idea, no clue. But when I found out, I reached out to the author of the book and I said, "Look, I no idea, never heard of your book, but somebody on YouTube mentioned it, and I just wanted to say that this was completely a random thing." And he was like, "Totally, no problem, not a problem." I said, "Okay." I said, "As a thank you, I'm putting a thank you in the movie. Thank you for not suing me." Because it was just I never read his book. How could I can't have stolen it from him. I got the idea from eating animal crackers with my kids. That's where the idea came from. But I know that any idea I come up with, there's going to be something similar out there. It's just, but I think ideas are allowed to coexist. For instance, I came up with an idea about 6 or 7 years ago about a guy who he's a detective, and it's slightly in the future where right before you die, you can have your consciousness, your brain mapped and consciousness upload to a virtual world. And so there's a guy he's a detective. He gets put into this virtual world, and he's got to solve this mystery because people are dying, and you're not supposed to be dying. It's an attack. And so I wrote the pilot episode like last year, and it's called Afterlife. And I knew about Ricky Gervais' Afterlife, and I loved that series, but I wasn't really worried about the similarity in names because again, I could always change the name. But we had a studio looking at it, and this was just like a few months ago. Suddenly, Amazon's coming out with a movie called Upload, or a series called Upload, where a guy is dying and then he gets his brain uploaded, and it's kind of like he's in heaven. And I was like, oh my God, this is exactly like my story, but goofier, because mine was more of a crime mystery kind of thing. And what can I do about it? I'm not going to sue them about it. It's not, wasn't an original idea. There's The Matrix. There's that Transcendence with Johnny Depp. There's so many science fiction tropes about stuff like that. I'm like, you know what? I'm still going to keep pushing this, and I'll find someone to put it out, because you can have all of these similar ideas, and each one's got their own style. Each one's got their own stories and whatnot, and they can coexist. I don't feel protective over my ideas.
You know what I think makes that happen for you, Scott, is that you can make more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the kind of like the power of creation, where you're not so beholden to something because you can create more of them.
You and I both know people who they make that one thing, and they just hold on to it for dear life. They'll never make anything as good as this. And I just, for me, it's like doing one painting and never painting again.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that. I constantly have new ideas. I constantly want to do, and not every one of them, not every painting I do is my favorite. Not every story I create is going to be fantastic, but I can paint with a certain amount of competence, and I feel I can write with a certain amount of competence. I can create stories. So I feel all of them are at a level where they're valid, and so just keep doing it. And if this one is just someone comes out with something, or someone steals it, or it gets tied up in a studio, or whatever it might be, okay, I'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, I always admire guys like Jack Kirby, who had so many ideas and very distinctive sections of his career, from the 40s to the 50s, when comics were then kind of dying. Then he came back in the 60s. I mean, the guy was just, and then he had drawers in his studio full of ideas that never got made.
I think, and not every artist is like that, but I think I want to be that frantic. I want to be Hamilton. Why do you write like you're running out of time? I don't know if you guys got a chance to see Hamilton, but it was just that whole thing of he's constantly, I feel like I'm running out of time. I'm halfway through my life because I'm going to live over 100, so I'm 51 years old, and I got to get all.
I'm living to 200.
I really, I want to. And the great thing is that I got to do Spider-Man by the time I was 30, and 30 was way too long for me, but I wanted to do that at 19, but I got to do Spider-Man. So I don't have to chase that dream anymore. Now, whatever I feel like doing, whether it's making a movie, or if I want to become a sculptor, or if I want to write a prose novel, or whatever it is that I might want to do, I could do. And
I'm sure you could do Spider-Man again now if you wanted.
Mm-hmm. I think if I did, I'd want to write it, because I honestly don't think I would ever want to tackle comic art again. I wouldn't know what style to do it in.
No, I think you can do any style now. I mean, that's the thing that was different than in the 90s. You kind of had the Image style. And now we've been talking to a lot of people on this podcast. I sort of feel like now there's all kinds of styles orbiting at the same time.
Yeah.
Where it's not one is more dominant than the other.
Yeah, back in the day, they were looking for the same style. We wanted to stay within the certain parameters, but now it's almost like the editors are looking for something new and unique. And I think that's how I got Spider-Man. It was different, and that was 2001. I got that, but I think you're right. Even more so right now, they are looking for, show me something I haven't seen before. But I don't know. I'll save it to the professionals like you guys. So.
So, Scott, what is the official date for Animal Crackers dropping on Netflix?
Is it like a certain day and time?
4th. Like I said, 13 days from now. It was 13 days from now, July 24th.
At midnight?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's like midnight Pacific time or something like that. So I don't know if that's Thursday night. So, I honestly don't know. But I just know that my job is to email, phone call, whatever, everybody I've ever met and ask them to tell everybody they've ever met. So I'm going to be just unavoidable come the 24th because I'm going to reach out to everybody. But again, I'm the marketing department at this point, and I have I will say this before I take all the credit. Netflix has been really wonderful. Olivier and Fumi have been working with Tony and I and setting up some stuff too as well, and they've been wonderful to work with. So I don't want to, in case they're watching, trust me, I would never take all the credit for that. But yeah, no, we've had. I feel like, I have to do everything. I don't want to leave anything on the ice, so to speak. I want to make sure that I do everything I can, whether it's answering every text message and YouTube comment or making as many GIFs as possible to doing every single, radio. I've been doing like radio calls with Memphis and Chicago and, whatever drive time calls and stuff like that. And it's been kind of cool, but I'll take it all. It'll be fun.
Well, that we'll signal boost for you, brother. Really
Thanks,
proud.
Yeah.
Really proud. And even when this was all coming together a couple of years ago, I remember as I pride myself as being a good signal booster. Back then, I was like, yeah, my man's doing this thing.
Yeah.
All of these crazy voice talents. And I remember at the time, people were like, wait, what? Who's in it? And it's almost like one of those things where people don't believe that your stuff could be so professional and so well made and so well traveled. It's kind of like a little bit of a disbelief to people until they see it.
I'm nobody, and I think it's hard when people see that a nobody is making something with a whole bunch of somebodies. Something ain't right. Who do you pay off? What does he have dirt on these people? And but I don't mind. Like I said, I've never. Kevin Grievous, he would always tease me because whenever there's a press release, I would always put a picture of my art or the project or, whatever the book was. And he's like, why don't you put a picture of yourself on there? It's about you selling this. And I was like, no, I don't want to be in front of the camera. I don't want to be the story, I just want to create this stuff. I just, my only things right now is I need money to pay for my kids' college because they're going to be seniors this year. And so those are my two goals right now, is just to make enough money for those two things and I'll be okay. But I don't want to be in front of the camera. I don't want to be famous. That's especially after what I saw, the musicians and the actors go through. I don't want any of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're in the perfect catbird seat right now. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up, Scott. You've been an amazing guest. Can you tell our listeners and viewers where they can find more of your personal effects on social media?
Your personal effects.
Personal effects. Here's my address. I'll leave the door open. My artwork. I know. I think most of my artwork is up on DeviantArt. I think I've also got I want to say Beyonce. What is it? Behance.
Beyonce. You're on Beyonce? Wow.
I'm on my Beyonce account. Behance or whatever. But if you look up SSAVA, SSAVA, you'll find it. Same thing with Instagram. I've been posting. I've been doing these This is my quarantine journal. So I've got it almost done, but I've been doing sketches every day and just notes every day. So this is I'll do like little time lapses and whatnot that I've been posting on the Instagram page. So if you look up S Sava art, I think on Instagram you'll find it. And but yeah, and I'll post stuff on Twitter, and I think I have a Facebook page. If you look up S Sava art on Facebook too, but I'm not hard to find. Just Google me.
Yeah, you have a great social media presence, and just the amount of artwork you post. It's almost like a daily schedule, or every other day. Or
I'm trying. Like on top of everything else, I'm trying. I don't always get to do it.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. So I'm really proud of you, brother. And good luck on the premiere. And I know I'll be watching.
Thank you. Thank you guys both.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, same here. Same here, Mike. Thank you guys for everything and for all the support. And thanks everybody who was putting up comments too. So I saw some regular names and faces.
Yeah,
that's great.
Well, good luck.
Thanks a lot, Scott. We'll catch up soon.
See you guys.
Thanks. Have a good night. I get to kick him out. Yes, that's my favorite part. I like to flush him. Thanks so much for SCOTT CHRISTIAN SAVA. I was looking forward to that for a long time, Mike. One of the things I'm really enjoying about kind of like our behind the scenes thing about the podcast is drumming up who's going to be on next, or who could we have this month. And like we said, I think one of the other podcasts is that, and we do enjoy when people throw out names, is that not everybody wants to be on camera.
No, actually, I had somebody I wanted to have on the podcast for a long time, and he just wrote me. He said that he's not up for it, but just doesn't like public speaking.
Yeah.
And this would be like the worst kind of public speaking. And he's a great artist, and I have to respect that. I mean, not everybody is comfortable speaking on camera. I've had other people say, well, they would prefer to do like when I would do the interviews with Draw. Some people I could talk to on the phone. Some, and then I would record it. But other people, I had to send them a series of questions that they would have to think about,
right? Then
answer, then send back. So, not everybody is comfortable doing a FaceTime or this StreamYard or whatever. And I would actually say that that's probably a good third of people are not comfortable doing it.
Right. And I think, I always like to talk about the like behind the curtain part of this, and that, Mike, yourself, Bret, maybe me to a bit. I think people get the idea that this is easy, right? Like, I just, turn on the thing and just go. But like, I think that's part of, I don't know, my personality is that I'm just comfortable, when you're at a comic book convention with the public and people are expecting you to perform and you have to be. Well,
you're a naturally gregarious person, but I also think that coming from, I've been teaching almost 20 years. You've been teaching a long time too. So I think in the beginning, it was an odd experience. Like Scott saying, you're sitting there, you're working, you're in your own headspace.
Yeah.
And then it's like a different thing to even go and just like go talk in a high school.
Right.
Or to go teach. And I remember the first semester of me teaching, I would come home just absolutely exhausted because I would be so full of energy, just like burning the whole time. And then after a while, you learn to pace yourself. You become more comfortable speaking, right? So I've been doing it long enough. It felt that way even oddly with the magazine in the beginning. Just even putting together the magazine.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, now they call it the imposter syndrome. It wasn't exactly that, but sort of similar to that, because you were not used to, even though I had all this information and I like finding out all this information, now I'm much more comfortable. Even people coming up to my table and telling me they liked my work was kind of a
right.
Like you want people to like your work, but it's like, oh, that's okay. That's
right.
Right. now I'm very comfortable with it. So,
and I think you also bring a really beautiful balance to the podcast, where I love that we could be comfortable enough that I can just say, all right, Mike, ask him a question, and you just go boom, 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 right? Because you're a curious person, and that makes you also a great artist and also a student of art, because you have this emptying cup of.
I'm a student. You're right.
Yeah, you're a student.
I'm always a student. I hope that I can learn something new every day. I hope that I can learn something about art. I'm always looking at art. I was looking at art right before we got on. I was looking at the Mead Schaefer book, but then I was looking at some Toth stuff earlier today, and I was talking with our buddy John Hebink, and we were looking at some Toth stuff the other day, and so that's what I enjoy, art. So, and because we're good friends, you don't have that weird, awkward conversation, because I've been interviewed before, and you don't have those natural rhythms and give and take that you do when you talk to somebody like we've been friends for over 20 years. So we have that natural flow of conversation, which I think also helps probably make the guest comfortable.
Yeah. And, sometimes I say before we come on, like when we're in the green room, sometimes I'll tell the guests, because not, like we said, some of the guests we may have just gotten them here, and they're like, how long is it? How long do I have to talk? What do I have to say? Sometimes you have to do some coaching.
Don't move for 20 minutes. Don't move. Just hold perfectly still.
Right. Don't breathe. And, sometimes you got to lead them, or I'll set things up and I say, listen, you just relax. We'll get you there. You know what I mean? We'll paddle the canoe. You just sit in the back, and it makes people a lot more comfortable.
Well, I think that for most artists, talking about their process, unless you're probably a teacher or you're one of the rare naturally gregarious people, especially cartoonists, I would say, because you tend to work by yourself. Painters, I think, you obviously are painting by yourself, but sometimes you're working with a model, or you're teaching, or in your school, you're a little bit more gregarious. You have gallery showings. Cartoonists don't usually have gallery showings, things like that, right? Now, but so I think for a lot of people in comics specifically, it's a very isolating job, and you spend a lot of time. You spend your most creative, productive hours alone, in isolation. Unless even if you work, and I've worked off and on, and Mimi's here, or Liang will be here, you still are in your head,
right?
Yeah.
Scott Kurtz, hey Scott, says you guys have really awesome guests on. I learn from them every time. That's
Thanks,
very nice.
Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. Yeah, and I think just the diversity of our guests, I think it really shines, right? There's almost like a top 20 of comic book artists that are on everybody's podcast and get asked the same 5 questions, and it's kind of but bringing on somebody like Scott, I've been following Scott for almost 20 years, and I always knew he was on a different frequency, right? So then when he's doing these Hollywood moves and rubbing elbows with these people, of course he is, but to the common, maybe comic book fan, they may not know who he is, or go, who? Right? You know what I mean? But then you see the work, and then you see the Animal Crackers and the Netflix deal, and then it's just like, oh, I had no idea. So just kind of digging a little deeper off of the surface into the creativity, I don't know, ground.
Well, also, I think, yeah, and I also think that because, for a long time, it was basically the direct market and people that worked in the direct market.
Yeah.
And now that's really dissolving, because you have all these different orbits now. You have the direct market people, but, now you have people coming up who don't know who John Byrne is, don't know who Jack Kirby is, don't know any of that other stuff, but they might be in their 10th year, and they didn't come up reading any of that stuff. You know, they might be in their 4th year as a professional working, but what was their inspiration was not what was the inspiration to people 20 years ago or 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's pretty cool, and it keeps the medium of comics, I think, constantly changing and growing, which I think is, like I said, you know, just looking at the Webtoons contest, where they had like 3,000 people or something, or over 3,000 people. I mean, it'd be like I said, I think on one of the other podcasts, it'd be like 3,000 people sending in their Spider-Man or their Hulk or X-Men comic. You know, here's editorial at Marvel here. 3,000 X-Men comic tryouts this week. You know.
So, but yeah, man, and you know, I think that's what really makes it special. I think it's the friendships, it's the very deep black book that we can pull from to bring in a lot of guests. And I also think one last part of this is that it's very rare that we have somebody on that one of us isn't connected to, or at least hasn't traded paths with at some point. So I think it makes the interviews more natural, right? And a little more even, because it's not like, I don't know who you guys are, I'm waiting for this curveball to come, you know, don't talk about my ex-wife, you know what I mean? Like, we're not going through that when we're talking to people, because there's already
next podcast, it'll just be all the bitter ex-wives of cartoonists, right? Showing the bitter ex-wife podcast.
So, all right, I'm gonna give a plug for our next episode, and then we're gonna skedaddle. So I'm very excited to say, my best bud Mike Manley, that this Wednesday, July 15th, we're gonna have your friend and mine, Mike Hawthorne, is going to come onto the podcast once again. I pull from Mike Hawthorne's well all the time. He's the first double interview in Draw Magazine.
Soon to be triple.
Triple, right? Because we interviewed him twice in the magazine. I interviewed him the first time. You interviewed him the last time. He was on our audio podcast, right, when we started doing this, doing the pencil to pencil. And I don't know if you knew this, Mike, but Hawthorne and I have been doing a Patreon exclusive Q&A session called It Ain't Hard to Tell, where we interview each other from Patreon questions. But he's going to be on this Wednesday. So we get to talk shop with him, and he's also going to
again.
He's also going to talk about his new graphic memoir, Happiness Will Follow, which is going to be releasing very soon, I think next week. So I'm very excited to talk to him and have him on camera with us. It's going to be a great episode. So I hope everybody can join us live. Remember, if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
And I think that's it. Mike, any last words before we kick out?
Splunge.
That's a great. This is the evening onomatopoeia. Here's my favorite onomatopoeia. My favorite comic book sound effect of breaking glass. Ka-chiss.
Ka-chiss.
Ka-chiss. A lot of S's. I love it. All right, you guys, that's it for us. For my good pal Mike Manley, I'm Jamar Nicholas. We'll see you on Wednesday with more pencil to pencil goodness. And as always, wash your hands. Have a good night, guys. Oh, and hang around for Watch Party Replay. See you soon.
Watch Party Replay.